Welcome everyone to Good Friday's liturgy. Today's liturgy we begin with a silent prayer, reflecting and meditating on Jesus' suffering, passion, and crucifixion. Let us spend a few moments in silence praying with Jesus' passion and crucifixion. Remember your mercies, O Lord, and with your eternal protection, sanctify your servants, for whom Christ your Son, by the shedding of his blood, established the Paschal mystery, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. See, my servant shall prosper. He shall be raised high and greatly exalted. Even as many were amazed at him. So marvelous his look beyond human semblance, and his appearance beyond that of the sons of man. So shall he startle many nations. Because of him, kings shall stand speechless. For those who have not been told shall see. Those who have not heard shall ponder. Who would believe what we have heard? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up like a sapling before him, like a shoot from the parched earth. There was in him no stately bearing to make us look at him, nor appearance that would attract us to him. He was spurned and avoided by people, a man suffering, accustomed to infirmity. One of those from whom people hid their faces, spurned, and we held him in no esteem. Yet it was our infirmities that he bore, our sufferings that he endured, while we thought of him as stricken, as one smitten by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our offenses, crushed for our sins. Upon him was the chastisement that makes us whole. By his stripes we were healed. We had all gone astray like sheep, each following his own way. But the Lord laid upon him the guilt of us all. Though he was harshly treated, he submitted and opened not his mouth. Like a lamb led to slaughter, or a sheep before the shears, he was silent and opened not his mouth. Oppressed and condemned, he was taken away. And who would have thought any more of his destiny? When he was cut off from the land of the living and smitten for the sin of his people, a grave was assigned for him among the wicked, and a burial place with evildoers, though he had done no wrong, nor spoken any falsehood. But the Lord was pleased to crush him in infirmity. If he gives his life as an offering for sin, he shall see his descendants in a long life, and the will of the Lord shall be accomplished through him. Because of his affliction, he shall see the light and fullness of days. Through his suffering, my servant shall justify many, and their guilt he shall bear. Therefore I will give him his portion among the great, and he shall divide the spoils with the mighty, because he surrendered himself to death, was counted among the wicked, and he shall take away the sins of many, and win the pardon of their offenses. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Second reading is a reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast to our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who has similarly been tested in every way, yet without sin. So let us confidently approach the throne of grace to receive mercy and to find grace for timely help. In the days when Christ was in the flesh, he offered prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered, and when he was made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ, King of endless glory. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ, King of endless glory. Christ became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Because of this, God greatly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every name. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ, King of endless glory.
The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ according to John. Jesus went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to where there was a garden in which he and his disciples entered. Judas, his betrayer, also knew the place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas got a band of soldiers and guards from the chief priests and the Pharisees, and went there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Jesus, knowing everything that was going to happen to him, went out and said to them,
"Whom are you looking for?"
They answered him,
Jesus, the Nazarene.
He said to them,
"I am."
Judas, his betrayer, was also with them. When he said to them, I am, they turned away and fell to the ground. So he again asked them,
"Whom are you looking for?"
They said,
Jesus, the Nazarene.
Jesus answered them,
"I told you that I am. So if you are looking for me, let these men go."
This was to fulfill what he had said, I have not lost any of those you gave me. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter,
"Put your sword into its scabbard. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father gave me?"
So the band of soldiers, tribune, and the Jewish guards seized Jesus, bound him, and brought him to Annas first. He was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had counseled the Jews that it was better that one man should die, rather than the people. Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. Now the other disciple was known to the high priest, and he entered the courtyard of the high priest with Jesus. But Peter stood at the gate outside. So the other disciple, the acquaintance of the high priest, went out and spoke to the gatekeeper and locked Peter in. Then the maid, who was the gatekeeper, said to Peter,
You are not one of this man's disciples, are you?
He said,
I am not.
Now the slaves and the guards were standing around the charcoal fire they had made because it was cold, and they were warming themselves. Peter was also standing there keeping warm. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his doctrine. Jesus answered him,
"I have spoken publicly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogue or in the temple area, where all the Jews gather, and in secret I have said nothing. Why ask me? Ask those who heard me what I said to them. They know what I said."
When he had said this, one of the temple guards standing there struck Jesus and said,
Is this the way you answer the high priest?
Jesus answered him,
"If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the truth, wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me?"
Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing there keeping warm, and they said to him,
You are not one of his disciples, are you?
He denied it and said,
I am not.
One of the slaves of the high priest, a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, said,
Didn't I see you in the garden with him?
Again, Peter denied it, and immediately the cock crowed. They then brought Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium. It was morning, and they themselves did not enter in order not to be defiled, so that they could eat the Passover. So Pilate came out and said to them,
What charge do you bring against this man?
They answered and said to him,
If he were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you.
At this, Pilate said to them,
Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law.
Jews answered him,
You do not have the right to execute anyone.
in order that the word of Jesus might be fulfilled, that he said, indicating the kind of death he would die. So Pilate went back into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus answered,
"Do you say this on your own, or have others told you about me?"
Pilate answered,
I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?
Jesus answered,
My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom did belong to this world, my attendants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not here.
So Pilate said to him,
Then you are a king.
Jesus answered,
You say I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice.
Pilate said to him,
What is truth?
when he had said this, he again went out to the Jews and said to them,
I find no guilt in him, but you have a custom that I release one prisoner to you at Passover. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?
They cried out.
Not this one, but Barabbas.
Now Barabbas was a revolutionary. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him scourged, and the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and placed it on his head, and clothed him in a purple cloak. And they came to him and said,
Hail, King of the Jews!
And they struck him repeatedly. Once more Pilate went out and said to them,
Look, I am bringing him out to you so that you may know that I find no guilt in him.
So Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple cloak. And Pilate said to them,
Behold, the man.
when the chief priests and the guards saw him, they cried out.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Pilate said to them,
Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no guilt in him.
the Jews answered,
We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God.
Now, when Pilate heard this statement, he became even more afraid. He went back to talk to Jesus.
Where are you from?
Jesus did not answer him. So Pilate said to him,
Do you not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to release you, and I have the power to crucify you?
Jesus answered him,
You would have no power over me if it had not been given to you from above. For this reason, the one who handed me over to you has the greatest sin.
Consequently, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews cried out.
If you release him, you are not a friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar.
When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and seated him in the judge's bench in the place called Stone Pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was preparation day for Passover, and it was about noon. And he said to the Jews,
Behold, your king.
They cried out.
Take him away, crucify him.
Pilate said to them,
Shall I crucify your king?
the chief priests answered.
We have no king but Caesar.
Then he handed him over to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross himself, went out to what is called the place of the skull, in Hebrew, Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with two others, one on either side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Now many of the Jews read this inscription because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate,
Do not write the king of the Jews, but that he said, I am the king of the Jews.
Pilate answered,
What I have written, I have written.
when the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 shares, a share for each soldier. They also took his tunic, but the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece, from the top down. So they said to one another,
Let's not tear it, but cast lots for it, to see whose it shall be.
in order that the passage of Scripture might be fulfilled that says, they divided my garments among them, for my vesture they cast lots. This is what the soldiers did, standing by the cross of Jesus, were his mother and his mother's sister, and Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple there whom he loved, he said to his mother,
Woman, behold your son.
Then he said to the disciple,
Behold your mother.
And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. After this, aware that everything was now finished, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, Jesus said,
I thirst.
There was a vessel filled with common wine, so they put a sponge soaked in wine on a sprig of hyssop and put it up to his mouth. When Jesus had taken the wine, he said,
It is finished.
and bowing his head, he handed over the Spirit. Now, since it was preparation day, in order that the bodies might not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for the Sabbath day of the week was a solemn one, the Jews asked Pilate that their legs be broken and they be taken down. So the soldiers came out and broke the legs of the first and then of the other who was crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead. They did not break his legs, but one soldier thrust his lance into his side, and immediately blood and water flowed out. An eyewitness has testified, and his testimony is true. He knows that he is speaking the truth, so that you also may come to believe. For this happens that the scripture passage might be fulfilled. Not a bone of it will be broken. And yet another passage that says, they will look upon him who they have pierced. After this, Joseph of Arimathea, secretly a disciple of Jesus for fear of the Jews, asked Pilate if he could remove the body of Jesus, and Pilate permitted it. So he came and took the body. Nicodemus, the one who had first come to him at night, also came, bearing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and bound it with burial cloths along with the spices, according to Jewish burial custom. Now in the place where he had been crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had yet been buried. So they laid Jesus there because of the Jewish preparation day, for the tomb was close by.
The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you,
Lord Jesus Christ. A couple of weeks ago, I read about a priest in Italy who was admitted in the hospital due to COVID-19. He was ministering to the people who were infected with the coronavirus. A few days later, a young man was admitted next to his bed and was badly needed a ventilator to support his life. But there was no ventilator left in that hospital. This priest came to know the situation and volunteered to give his ventilator to this young person to support his life. And on the following day, March 17, this priest, Father Don, passed away. And he was 72 years old. He sacrificed his life to save the life of this young person. Today we remember the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus on the cross in Calvary. Jesus sacrificed his life to save us. Today on Good Friday, we confront one of the biggest mysteries faced by human beings, that is of undeserved suffering. We know that Jesus was a man who in his time on earth did nothing but good for others. And yet, as we have heard again today, he was humiliated, he was tortured, put to death in one of the cruelest ways possible. I suspect that most of us have experienced situations of unmerited suffering, where despite our best efforts, something has happened, or someone has behaved to cause us deep pain. Some people have lived life, wholesome lives, and then cancer, or a stroke, or a debilitating heart attack has struck. A child, a sibling, or a parent offering nothing but love may be hurtfully treated by a family member. The understandable reaction may be one of rage, bitterness, or even escapism into mindless pleasure. What was Jesus' way of dealing with this undeserved suffering? There are two messages that emerge. First, we see Jesus' quiet dignity. While others around clamor for answers, Jesus does not question his fate. He, in fact, says very little. He simply holds fast to who he is and what he stands for, and endures. So when you go through this experience of suffering in your life, what you need to do, hold fast and go through the valley of darkness to the other side. The second and even greater message to emerge comes shortly before Jesus dies. Jesus sees his heartbroken mother standing near his cross, together with the disciple whom Jesus especially loved. Through all his agony, he thinks of their needs in their lonely lives ahead of them without his presence. And he directs his mother and the disciple to be mother and son to each other. So Jesus shows that the best way to endure suffering is to continue loving unflatteringly to the end. The messages of Jesus were recently illustrated for me when I read a true story in a magazine. Tom was contacted by his family friend, and whose husband had unaccountably left her for someone else. When she came to see Tom, her many tears told of her broken heart, bewilderment, and desolation. But through all this, she kept her dignity and her faith. And she also held fast to her love for her husband. She said that she was concerned about him, and she asked this man Tom to be his friend, to help him in whatever way his life led him in the future. So when Tom saw her husband later, he told him of his wife's undimmed love for him. And her love shone as a beacon for both of them, and ultimately led him home. In 1948, the great South African author Alan Paton published a book called Cry the Beloved Country. In this book, he told of the unmerited suffering of the black people in South Africa. There seemed no light ahead for them as they faced humiliating discrimination just for the color of their skin. The main character in this book is Stephen, a black priest. Through all his terrible setbacks, Stephen says, I have never thought that a Christian would be free of suffering. For our Lord suffered, and I came to believe that He suffered not to save us from suffering, but teach us how to bear suffering. I have learned that kindness and love can pay for pain and suffering.
For the Holy Church. Let us pray, dearly beloved, for the Holy Church of God, that our God, the Lord, be pleased to give her peace, to guard her and to unite her throughout the whole world, and grant that leading our faith for life in tranquility and quiet, we may glorify God, the Father Almighty.
Almighty ever-living God, who in Christ revealed your glory to all the nations, watch over the works of your mercy, that your church, spread throughout the whole world, may persevere with steadfast faith in confessing your name through Christ our Lord.
For the Pope. Let us pray also for our most holy Father, Pope Francis, that our God and Lord, who chose him for the order of bishops, may keep him safe and unharmed for the Lord's holy church, to govern the holy people of God.
Almighty ever-living God, by whose decree all things are founded, look with favor on our prayers, and in your kindness protect the Pope chosen for us, that under him the Christian people, governed by you, their Maker, may grow in merit by reason of their faith, through Christ our Lord.
For all orders and degrees of the faithful. Let us pray also for Archbishop Kurtz, for all bishops, priests, and deacons of the church, and for the whole of the faithful people.
Almighty ever-living God, by whose Spirit the whole body of the Church is sanctified and governed, hear our humble prayer for your ministers, that by the gift of His grace all may serve you faithfully, through Christ our Lord.
For catechumens. Let us pray also for our catechumens, that our God and Lord may open wide the ears of their inmost hearts and unlock the gates of his mercy, that, having received forgiveness for all of their sins through the waters of rebirth, they too may be one with Christ Jesus our Lord.
Almighty ever-living God, who make your church ever fruitful with new offspring, increase the faith and understanding of our catechumens, that reborn in the form of baptism, they may be added to the number of your adopted children, through Christ our Lord.
For the unity of Christians, let us pray also for our brothers and sisters who believe in Christ, that our God and Lord may be pleased as they live the truth, to gather them together and keep them as one church.
Almighty ever-living God, who gather what is scattered and keep together what you have gathered, look kindly on the work of your Son, that those whom one baptism has consecrated may be joined together by integrity of faith and united in the bond of charity, through Christ our Lord.
For the Jewish people, let us pray also for the Jewish people, to whom the Lord our God spoke first, that he may grant them to advance in love of his name and in faithfulness to his covenant.
Almighty ever-living God, who bestowed your promises on Abraham and his descendants, graciously hear the prayers of your church, that the people you first made your own may attain the fullness of redemption through Christ our Lord. Amen.
For those who do not believe in Christ, let us pray for also those who do not believe in Christ, that, enlightened by the Holy Spirit, they too may enter on the way of salvation.
Almighty ever-living God, grant to those who did not confess Christ that by walking before you with a sincere heart, they may find the truth, and that we ourselves, being constant in mutual love and striving to understand more fully the mystery of your life, may be made more perfect witnesses to your love in the world, through Christ our Lord.
For those who do not believe in God, let us pray also for those who do not acknowledge Him, that, following what is right and sincerity of heart, they may find the way to God Himself.
Almighty ever-living God, who created all people to seek you always by desiring you, and finding you come to rest, grant, we pray, that despite every harmful obstacle, all may recognize the signs of your Fatherly love, and the witness of the good works done by those who believe in you, and so in gladness confess you, the one true God and Father of our human race, through Christ our Lord.
For those in public office, let us pray also for those in public office, that our God and Lord may direct their minds and hearts according to His will, for the true peace and freedom of all.
Almighty ever-living God, in whose hand lies every human heart, and the rights of peoples, look with favor, we pray, on those who govern with authority over us, that throughout the whole world, the prosperity of peoples, the assurance of peace, and freedom of religion may, through your gift, be made secure through Christ our Lord.
For those in tribulation, let us pray, dearly beloved, to God the Father Almighty, that He may cleanse the world of all errors, banish disease, drive out hunger, unlock prisons, loosen fetters, granting to travelers safety, to pilgrims return, health to the sick, and salvation to the dying.
Almighty ever-living God, comfort of mourners, strength of all who toil, may the praise of those who cry out in tribulation come before you, that all may rejoice, because in their hour of need, your mercy was at hand, through Christ our Lord. Veneration of the Holy Cross. Behold the wood of the cross, on which comes the salvation of the world. Come, let us adore. Behold the wood of the cross, on which comes the salvation of the world. Come, let us adore. Behold the wood of the cross, on which comes the salvation of the world. Come, let us adore.